My partner and I started dating in college and got married after we graduated years later. I've always been the driven one in the relationship and pushed him to take school seriously and graduate. I came from a lower middle class family and have had a job since I was legally able to work. I have always paid my cell phone bill, bought my car, and paid for my college by working full-time through school, taking classes when I could, or taking out student loans to help. I can't remember a time when I ever asked my parents for money because I knew they didn't have it. My parents fought about money a lot. Even in grade school, if I wanted to go to the movies or shopping for school clothes, I worked and paid for those. My partner grew up in a big house and never really had to want for things, especially after his dad remarried. He married into a family with a lot of money, like 1% kind of money. My partner went on insane trips, had a credit card through school, and everything paid for until he failed school, and his dad kind of cut him off. That's when I had to step in and push him to finish. He would have stayed out of school and worked at a restaurant had I not pushed him to finish. Fast forward to us getting married. We were living in a family member's rental house, and I didn't understand why we weren't focusing on buying a home. We started trying for a baby, and when we got pregnant, I talked to him about how important it was to have a place that was ours when we brought our baby home. He would listen and agree, but never really took any actionable steps towards saving or anything. It wasn't until I practically had a meltdown, found a house to look at, and gave him an ultimatum that we bought our first house. His job at the time had him gone for weeks at a time, which wasn't ideal with a new baby. So I started talking to him about what his plans were so that he could be home with us and work. He quit his job and started working for a close family member who ran a marijuana grow, making next to nothing, and kept telling me that it was going to go somewhere. That his boss had him on a path to make 6 figures, and that he would make commissions on brokered sales, etc. Needless to say, this never happened. He was able to get our kids on insurance paid for by the company, and since our car was used for work, he was able to have the car payment covered by the company. I was working in a very competitive industry, which had me gone a lot, so our child went to daycare around 3 months old. I hated my job, but I was the breadwinner, and I felt like I was trapped, even though it was a super toxic environment and not good for my mental health. I spoke with my partner regularly about this, and he promised that he was looking for jobs related to his degree, which would have paid much more, but he could never find anything. This went on for years. He is still looking for a job 5 years later. During the pandemic, I was able to secure a work-from-home job making more money than I was before, and it's such a better environment. But this is where the house of cards starts to fall. About a year ago, my partner came home panicked because the grow lost their license to grow the plants. They lost it because he missed the deadline for renewal. He had to let everyone go. The business was not bringing in revenue and actually lost thousands of dollars because they had to destroy everything currently in the grow, since legally they weren't supposed to have it. When I was talking to him about it, I asked him to really focus on getting a different job, and he said something along the lines of, "I wasn't really trying before, like I told you." For years, I came home crying, stressed out, and upset because I was so miserable at my job, and he was lying to me about trying to find a job so that I could get out of my current position. I cried to him about not getting to see my baby because they were asleep when I left early in the morning and asleep when I got home late at night. And he was lying to me about trying to find a job so that he could help with the burden of financial security. It's been a year, and he still has not found a job. He spent 8 months leaving in the morning and going to his family member's house to help with odd-end jobs and acted like he was still working, only to find out 2 months ago that he was not getting a paycheck anymore. I asked him to help me come up with a budget and take finance classes because he has no idea how to manage finances. I have investment accounts set up for our kids, a 401k, and short-term investment accounts for us. I have a small emergency fund. He doesn't even have a savings account. This past year has been super challenging for me mentally, and I've gotten on antidepressants to help manage the anxiety and depression I've felt. To add to everything, we had to open a new bank account because my partner's paycheck was coming from a business that is not federally legal, marijuana. Our bank sent us a letter with a cashier's check for our entire bank account, asking us not to try and open an account with them again. My partner went and opened an account that got approved, but because I was working, he set the account up and I was not initially added. I asked him to please just help manage our finances since I was handling everything else. I found out a few weeks ago that he was no longer getting a paycheck, that he let our homeowner's insurance renew without looking at the new fee, that he started secretly charging their health insurance to his credit card, and that he was making our car payment. I have been busting my butt and making the most money I've ever made in my life, and we are living paycheck to paycheck because he lied to me about an additional $2,000 a month that we were spending, and leaving out the fact that he was no longer getting paid. Not only that, every single thing he does, he has to ask me about, like he has no intuition or initiative to do things on his own. I don't know how to move forward. I can't trust him. If he's not lying, he's being vague and leaving stuff out. I just feel resentful and like I'm drowning. Like I'm just watching all of my goals sink under the weight of his decisions. I'm burnt out and lonely. Like I'm doing this all alone. And he's just an extra child that I have to plan for. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. It's kind of late now, but I don't even know how you got into this situation or are surprised it's come to this. He sounds like a complete bum through and through. Maybe not the unkind type. I'm sure he has some nice qualities. But he has shown no ambition, intellectual thinking, or long-term planning at any stage during the story you just told. Again, I'm not sure how you ended up married with a child. But anyways, yeah, it seems if you want to stay with him, you're just going to have to be prepared to struggle and grind it out for the rest of your life. Some people accept and do that, others don't and get out. So that's the decision you have to make at this point. Comment 2. You are doing it alone. If he actually cared, he would be working and taking this burden away from you. But he doesn't care. How many more years are you going to stay with him and drown? Choose to love yourself and do what you need to do to thrive and be happy. Now, for the update. It's been just over 2 days since my last post, and things have gotten even worse. My partner's paycheck issue turned into a bigger mess when I found a bunch of unopened bills in his backpack. Yeah, you heard that right. A bunch of unopened bills. The bills were for utilities, and some were overdue. I confronted him about the bills, and he said he was going to pay them. I asked him why he hadn't mentioned them, and he said he didn't want to stress me out. Seriously? That's his excuse? He promised to handle it, but I felt like I couldn't trust him anymore. So, my parents invited us over for dinner to celebrate my dad's birthday. My mom asked everyone how work was going, and let me tell you, my partner froze when it was his turn to answer. He stumbled over his words, and my dad pressed him about his job situation. My partner claimed he was working on a big opportunity, but I knew it wasn't true. After dinner, I went to the kitchen to help my mom clean up. I found my partner talking to my brother in the living room, and it looked tense. I overheard my brother asking him about his job, and my partner gave vague answers. I stepped in, and my brother looked concerned, which made me uneasy. Later that night, my brother pulled me aside and said he didn't think my partner was being honest with me. A few days later, my partner asked if we could meet at a local coffee shop to talk. Instead, he confessed he had been using our savings to fund his side projects. He said he was convinced it would make us rich, but I didn't see how. I told him that wasn't how things worked, and that we were struggling already. He insisted he would make it work and asked for my support. The tension at home increased, and I could feel the strain building. My parents noticed something was wrong and asked if we were okay. I avoided their questions, not wanting to drag them into our issues. My partner suggested we go to a local festival to take our minds off things. At the festival, I saw his cousin working a booth promoting Zaza products. I learned that my partner had been spending time with him and discussing business plans. I felt blindsided and confronted him about it that night. He denied it initially, but eventually admitted he had invested in his cousin's business. The next morning, I found a notice about an eviction in the mailbox. I told him we needed to talk about our finances, and he got defensive. He accused me of not believing in him, and I snapped back that he hadn't given me a reason to. The argument got worse, and he stormed out, saying he couldn't deal with my negativity. I didn't hear from him for hours, and I started to panic. When he finally came back, he said he needed a break from everything. He suggested he would stay with his cousin temporarily to clear his head. Mini update: my partner has now been living with his cousin for a week. He claims to be working on the business, but I feel uneasy. Our communication is limited, leaving me stressed and uncertain. Am I the idiot for questioning my girlfriend's loyalty after finding her at a hotel with a friend? My girlfriend, who is 29 years old, and I, who am 30 years old, recently moved in together about 4 months ago, and the last 6 weeks have been the most insane transformation I've ever experienced. I've been trying to be extra understanding because I feel like she's going through a few changes right now, like moving into my house, and she just started working remotely at a new job as well. I know how difficult the transition was when I started working remotely, so I'm giving extra grace, but her behavior is so odd. She has a handful of really close friends that I've always known and interact well with. We all hang out collectively sometimes, and there's one of her friends who comes over to play video games with me even when she's not there. We're kind of opposite. I'm more of an inside person who prefers gaming, watching anime, or doing handiwork around the house, so she goes out way more than I do. We already knew this even before getting together, and it was never a problem. We started having a few problems with some fairly new friends she's made. 2 girls in particular, one of whom I've never met. Here are the main issues with these new friendships. 1. Getting sloppy drunk and not remembering anything from the night before. I always ask her about it the next day, and she has no clue. 2. Obsessive behavior. They literally text all day, every day. 3. The sleeping out. She's developed a habit of sleeping out 2 to 3 times a week lately out of nowhere. Since we've been dating, she has never slept out at a friend's house before, so I don't even know where this one is coming from. I've spoken to her about how uncomfortable it makes me, and she stopped for 4 days, then went right back to sleeping over the following Monday. I lost my AirPods yesterday and tried locating them in Find My, and saw her wallet location. It's shared with my account because she always loses it. She was at the friend's house that I specifically told her makes me uncomfortable. Not only that, but when she left, she said she was going to visit a different friend. I asked her about it, and she said, "Oh, I was just going to message you and let you know where I was." She's come home wearing a necklace and pendant of the island the girl is from. At first, when I asked where she got it, she tried brushing it off and said she's wearing it for me. I'm from the same country as the new friend. Then when she finally told me, I asked her to remove it, and she did. I'm not a fan of asking people where they are, checking people's location, or displaying any controlling tendencies. I'm very laid back, and I think she's also taking advantage of that part of my personality. The first time she slept over there, she made it seem like a group sleepover. She said that she and the group of girlfriends we normally hang out with were all staying over there after a party. That's more than okay. Go have fun. We hung out with those same friends on Halloween, and they're saying how missing in action she's been, and they haven't seen her in such a long time. And that's when I learned that there was no group sleepover. Just her and the girl and my foolish self at home. I think what's upsetting me the most is that she's making me feel crazy. I've brought up my concerns and she's made it seem like I'm blowing it out of proportion. On one hand, I want to trust her and not have to question her about things like this. But on the other hand, I've been feeling very out of character lately. Like I have to do check-ins because something is clearly off here. We have our marriage license and everything. But she's been so fickle and absent at home lately that I do not want this for my future. I'm currently doing everything in the household, from cleaning to cooking to taking care of her cat. As much as I want to build a future with her, I don't think these actions reflect someone who is ready to be a wife and mother. The only thing keeping me here is the fact that it was never like this in all the time we've been together before. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. If she is not even acknowledging your feelings, then something is wrong. She should at least try to understand or compromise somewhere. Her actions are impacting you directly at this point. Comment 2. Sleeping over at someone else's place for days at a time is excessive. At that point, I wouldn't care if she is actually cheating or not. I would still be done. Now for the update. I'm back with an update. It's been 2 weeks since Olivia and I had that big fight. Let's just say things have gotten way more intense. So Olivia was staying over at a friend's place again. Yeah, you guessed it, the same friend whose house I found her wallet at. Honestly, I shouldn't have been surprised by now, but I was. I thought maybe after that argument we had, she would chill a bit, but no. I was scrolling through her phone one day. I know, but you'll get why in a sec. I saw a notification from a group chat with her friends. They were talking about a wild night out at this bar. Now, I don't know about you, but when I see something like that, I feel like I need to know exactly what's going on. So I checked out the bar's social media, and what do I find? Photos of Olivia and her friends from the night before. I get that people go out and have fun, but these pics were something else. They were all drinking a lot, acting like total idiots, and just laughing like crazy. But Olivia? She looked different, like a totally different person. Not just because she was wearing a ton of makeup. She looked like she was acting differently. I can't even explain it. So she comes home the next day, and I just couldn't hold back. I asked her about the photos, and she just brushed it off like it was nothing. Just having fun, she said. I was overreacting, according to her. I noticed a new bracelet on her wrist, one I didn't recognize. She said it was a gift from one of her friends for her birthday. Her birthday is in May. Seriously. A few days later, I get a text from my sister inviting us to a family dinner. I mentioned it to Olivia, and she just seemed so not interested. It was like I was talking to a wall. At the dinner, my parents asked us about our future plans, and Olivia made this joke about eloping. The whole table went silent. I mean, who jokes about that? After dinner, I tried to talk to her about our future, but she just changed the subject. A few days later, I was going through her bag, looking for my charger, and I found this receipt from a hotel for a 2-night stay. I asked her about it, and she said it was a mistake. She booked it for a friend. Sure, Jan. Over the weekend, Olivia went out with her friends again, this time for a birthday party. The next day, I found a used lipstick in the bathroom, not hers. When I asked her about it, she said it belonged to a friend who stayed over once. A friend, huh? So, I decided to look through our shared photos on my phone. I found this picture from a recent outing where Olivia was standing super close to a guy I didn't recognize. That made my heart sink. A week later, I was at the supermarket and ran into Olivia's friend Sarah. She mentioned seeing Olivia more often and having these crazy adventures. Just what I wanted to hear. I brought it up to Olivia, and she snapped at me for being controlling. Just a few days after that, I came home early from work and found her car parked outside. I walked in to find her having a loud conversation with a guy I'd never met before. I couldn't take it anymore, so that night I packed a bag and went to my sister's place. I texted Olivia that I needed time to think about our relationship. The next day, she showed up at my sister's house, demanding to talk. We had this heated argument in the living room. She accused me of not trusting her and being paranoid. She left in tears. A few days passed without any contact from her. I just focused on work and spent time with my family. Yesterday, I got a message from Olivia asking to meet up and talk. I agreed, knowing it might lead to some tough conversations. And that brings us to today. We met at this quiet coffee shop that was pretty much empty, which was perfect for what we needed to do. I was pretty much ready for anything. To answer a few questions, Olivia has known the guy in our house for a while. She claims their relationship is platonic, but our friends think differently. No cheating has been confirmed. Am I the idiot for refusing to let my wife's violent brother ruin our wedding and threaten our family's safety? I am really struggling with this one and need all the advice I can get. I feel I am about to do something that might cause the people I love a lot of hurt, and I'm not sure if I have any other options. My 33-year-old wife and I got married in July. It was largely a really wonderful event, and we really enjoyed it for the overwhelming majority of the day. On the evening at around 10:30 p.m., my wife's brother was obviously fairly drunk and approached me at the wedding. All he said to me was that someone was causing problems and he was asking me to kick them out. The other person he was asking me to kick out was a longtime family friend from my side of the family, and I pretty instantly made the judgment that my wife's brother was causing some trouble and said to him, "No, you're causing the issue. You need to leave." It's also worth noting that my wife was pregnant at our wedding. In hindsight, that decision was a bad one. I should have been more patient. My wife's brother has a long history of harassing me in public settings, however. Some examples. At Christmas one year, he called me a tramp in front of his entire family because he didn't like what I was wearing. At his own grandmother's funeral, he decided to get drunk and throw more abuse at me for no apparent reason. Generally, whenever he is around alcohol, he sees fit to abuse me and others, although I seem to be a particularly common target. So I asked him to leave, and he very quickly lost his temper. He walked outside, and I heard shouting, so I went outside. Here's where I made my biggest mistake of the night. I got into a shouting match with him. I told him he's pathetic and that he needs to grow up. He squared up to me, close to my face, and screamed at me repeatedly. That night, he sent my wife and me some drunk voicemails. These voicemails very clearly implied he was going to physically attack me. His reasoning for this was that a couple of months earlier, he had overheard an argument between my wife and me and had decided I was harassing my wife. Despite my wife being incredibly clear with him that this is not the case, he seems to have made his mind up. He then blocked both my wife and me, so there was no chance of a response. Note, he has been previously convicted for sending malicious communications to his ex-girlfriend. He threatened to unalive her new boyfriend. He was sentenced to 200 hours of community service, which he has since served. When this all happened, I felt very threatened. I told his family, my wife, his mother, his father, I was going to send the voicemails to the police. They talked me out of it, which I am now regretting, basically saying that if I did that, I would hurt them. His mother implied my relationship with her would basically be over. My wife said she would be very upset, but would understand. Some months later, my wife talked to her mother about how she missed her brother. Her mother passed this on. My wife then received an hurtful voicemail, once again threatening and insulting me, but also saying my wife had manipulated her mother and that she didn't really miss him. She was absolutely distraught by this. My wife gave birth to our first son yesterday. The birth went well and both mother and baby are healthy. However, her brother decided to unblock her and send her a message. This time, he was largely kind to her, telling her how much he loved her and the baby. He did also add, though, and this is literally the day after my wife gave birth, that he never wants to see Fatty again, referring to me, and a number of other colorful insults. Here's my conundrum. I have a big, red nuclear button sitting next to me. I can report all of these voicemails to the police, and with almost certainty, he will be charged and face trial again as a reoffender. I feel that using that button is the morally right thing to do. He is dangerous, and that needs dealing with. I, however, also know that if I do press that button, it is going to hurt my wife and her family. I also feel my wife and her family are offering me no protection and simply asking me to adapt around their needs while not helping me to feel safe. My wife is obviously fragile right now after giving birth. Otherwise, I would discuss this more directly with her. I am really struggling to both support my wife and feel safe. What can I do? Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. So what exactly are his abuses towards you besides calling you a tramp? He came up to you with a problem, and you automatically assumed it was all him and went straight to kicking him out. No hearing the story, no talking to your wife. That was an inappropriate move on your part. Are you harassing his sister, and is this the reason he doesn't like you? It doesn't matter what your wife says about it because the majority of people who are abused defend their aggressor. He seems to have an extreme dislike for you. Why? What made him start hating you? Comment 2. Keep those messages and otherwise ignore the guy. At least until your wife and your newborn aren't in that vulnerable state to handle all that stress from you pushing that button anymore. Also, make it clear that you won't tolerate her brother in your house and that you won't attend family functions where he is around. This is just not the time and place to deal with this. Now for the update. My wife and I finally reported her brother to the police after years of threatening behavior. A week after the police thing happened, I met up with my wife for a talk at home. I knew we had to deal with her brother's behavior, even though it's not what I wanted to do. Guess what? He sent another hurtful message. I had to show it to my wife to make her see how bad it really was. You just can't make something bad look good, I guess. She didn't want to do anything about it at first, but eventually agreed that something had to be done about him. So we decided to have her parents over for dinner to talk it out. That took a few days to organize, though. I spent all that time getting ready for a dinner that might end up being a mess. I really had to think things through and stay calm, especially since this was my wife's family and her brother we were dealing with. I wasn't sure how her parents would react, and I didn't want to make things worse for us. Her parents came over on a Friday evening, bringing a homemade lasagna and dessert. Can't say no to that, right? The atmosphere started light, with small talk about the baby and family updates, but I could feel the tension building as dinner went on. After dinner, I finally brought up the brother's behavior. I said it was affecting our family dynamic. Her parents looked shocked and exchanged glances, but didn't say anything. I shared the threats I received. I mean, we couldn't just ignore this anymore. Her dad finally spoke, saying he was concerned, but also mentioning family loyalty. That was a big one. My wife defended me, saying that our safety should come first and we needed to act. Her dad reluctantly agreed, but wanted to talk to the brother first. Like, seriously? We decided to set up a family dinner with the brother to discuss everything. It was going to be an awkward one. The dinner with her brother was set for the following Sunday at a local Italian restaurant. You know, the one with the good breadsticks. Her brother showed up late, looking disheveled and a bit drunk. Not even surprised at this point. The atmosphere was super awkward. He tried making jokes to lighten the mood, which didn't help. My wife's dad tried steering the conversation to neutral topics, but I knew we had to confront the issue. I finally spoke up and addressed the brother's messages directly. I told him they were completely unacceptable. The guy just laughed it off, saying he was just being funny. I was so over this. My wife cut in, expressing her concern for our family and the baby. She urged her brother to take it seriously. Then everything changed. He became defensive, insisting he was just being protective. I mean, come on. Then he shoved me. I wasn't having it. I pushed him back, making it clear I wouldn't back down. That's when a bystander called the police. The brother saw it and decided to hop in his car and speed off. My wife thanked me for standing my ground. Her parents seemed to support us in this situation too. We finally decided to report her brother's behavior to the authorities. It just came down to that. We prioritized our safety and our baby's well-being. Her parents offered to help us with the baby. They wanted to provide support as we navigated this situation. That's it for now. I'm feeling a mix of relief and anxiety, honestly. I'm glad we finally took a stand and reported my wife's brother, but now I'm just waiting for the fallout. It's a tough position to be in, especially with a baby involved and family dynamics all over the place. I just hope we did the right thing and that this will help keep us safe. Again, thank you to everyone who gave helpful advice. I'm not sure if I will be updating further, however. To answer a few questions, my wife and I had been avoiding this for years due to family pressure. The baby changed our perspective on prioritizing safety, leading us to finally act. If you like this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.